I'm Kulvinder Kaur. I am the founder and CEO of Nariva Health, and it's a diagnostics company, a preclinical diagnostics company using the skin as our biomarker source.
Can you explain it a little bit more for our audience who might, might not be from a healthcare background?
Yeah, of course. So one of the things we don't necessarily realize is that the skin is actually releasing a lot of information every single day that tells us what's happening inside the health of the body. And so one of the projects that we have ongoing right now is a breast cancer screening tool where we apply our collection methodology, our collection materials to each breast, and then look at the genomic markers that we can recover from these collection media, and then use that to infer what's happening in the breast, whether there are any signals for tumorigenesis or whether it's how we compare each of the breasts to each other. So then we've got a healthy reference, and then anything that diverges from the healthy reference we can triage to mammography, for example.
Really want to know, how did this idea even come up? What is the need in the market? What is the healthcare system getting wrong right now?
Well, what I guess I would say is that this idea has probably been 15 years in the making, back from my postdoc days at Oxford, where I knew there were very specific biomarkers that I wanted to be able to analyze, but they degraded really, really quickly. And so they're much more stable in the skin. But more so than that, what I've always been dedicated throughout my career to is the patient journey. And actually blood or giving a biospecimen, oftentimes, at least from a diagnostics and a genomics perspective, is the beginning of that journey. And so if that process for providing the specimen is invasive, as blood can be, as a urine sample can be, as a stool sample can be, or just uncomfortable, then that's going to take away from that patient experience. And so if we can put the patient at the center of their opportunity to provide a specimen in these cases, then we hope that, one, more patients will enroll, but two, that they'll have a much more comfortable experience of enrolling. And our methodology involves actually just a simple adhesive tape. We've engineered these materials quite extensively, but from a patient perspective, it is essentially applying an adhesive tape to the skin surface and then putting it in the mail. So there's no cold chain logistics. They ship it to our lab, and then we do all of the work on the back end.
And what has your thought process been, and what are your hopes for the healthcare industry in the future, particularly to oncology?
Well, one of the things that I'm most excited about, I don't even know if I can say it out loud, but it's the truth for me, and maybe it's the truth for many people who have been in this oncology pathway, is that preclinical detection is a really exciting opportunity. And especially being of Indian heritage, and I was at Sadhguru's session yesterday, and I have a deep curiosity around what could it look like if we were able to identify biomarkers that are not necessarily going to be deterministic of the outcome, that are reversible. So for example, we do look at gene expression biomarkers with our technology. We also look at methylation biomarkers. And we know that some of these markers can be induced by the environment, but we also know that our interactions with the environment can cause a reversal. So there is a part of me that is very curious about what it could look like if we were to pick up some of these reversible biomarkers preclinically and see if there were interventions that could be applied prior to them needing clinical intervention or going into the clinical pathway. And that's a wide open question, but I think, being of Indian heritage, that question becomes very prominent because we do have a very rich history of ancient wisdom technologies. We do have a very rich history of Ayurveda. We do have a very rich history of yoga and meditation. We do have access to a lot of learnings around this larger spiritual axis that could potentially address some of that preclinical journey before it needs a long journey of chemotherapy, radiotherapy, surgery, reconstruction. That is such an arduous journey. I do dream of a day when we could potentially identify patients before they have to go into that industrial machine.
Yeah. So knowing what you know now, is there anything you wish you had known when you started out?
As an entrepreneur, probably what I wish I'd known earlier was that there is a huge amount of support out there available. Entrepreneurs, other entrepreneurs, business people are really, really ready and willing to share their knowledge and share their information. And when I started out, I was kind of flying blind. I had this observation in the lab, I had this technical understanding, I had my life experience in yoga and meditation, and in actually observing some of these biomarkers shifting over time. And I really just wanted to put them all together, and I had no idea how I was going to do that. I honestly most days still have no idea how I'm going to do that, but I've just encountered teachers and people and organizations who have really willingly shared their knowledge, shared their expertise, shared their technologies, and I think knowing how much support there is actually out there would have saved me a lot of time and just a lot of searching for how is it that I'm going to take this dream and make it into a reality. But I also genuinely believe that people come into your life at the right time, and that's definitely been my story, that when I've needed to solve a problem, I've had access to the problem solvers. Oftentimes, I don't want to use the word, but it's true, kind of almost miraculously, they've just turned up at the right time in the right place, and so that's pretty exciting.